Welcome to the Emotional and Mental Health Summit. My name is Dolores Andrew Gavin and I'm your host. I am the founder of The Mythic Fairy, a dedicated children's website for all things emotional health. I'm also the author of 2 children's books, an empowerment and assertive coach, a podcaster, blogger and mum. I have 2 reasons, I guess, for doing this summit and bringing it together. And firstly, it's to support the whole conversation that's already there around emotional and mental health. And secondly, I also want to bring tools to people to show them that, I suppose, firstly, that there are tools that we can use to help us, whether that be learning something like emotional freedom technique or helping ourselves to step into our power by finding our voice. There are lots of different tools I'll share on this summit from the speakers that will be speaking. And also, of course, you also will hear from people who have been on a journey themselves. So it's always good to know that we're not alone and that others have travelled the same path possibly as ourselves. I hope that you enjoy the summit. Thanks for being here. Welcome back to the Emotional and Mental Health Summit. Today I'm delighted to be joined by the lovely Jen Hogan. Jen is a parenting expert, in my opinion. She's a journalist, she's a blogger, she has her own blog called Momitude, and she's also the author of a book called The Real Mum's Guide to Surviving Parenthood. You're very welcome to the summit, Jen.
Hi, Dolores. Thanks a million for having me.
Yeah, it's great, and I love the conversation that we're having with each of the speakers, and each speaker is bringing their own unique life experiences, which is great, and tools to help people then. And gems of wisdom that we give, we think we may not have them to give, but we all have those gems that we can give to other people for inspiration, and also to help people realize that either one, they're not alone on their journey, or number 2, that they can actually adopt other tools to help them wherever they are, where nobody's in a wrong. In my opinion, in this world, we are where we are, and we are here because of the life experiences that have brought us here. But we can change those, in my opinion, if we wish to. So, without further ado, Jen, I'd love to talk to you first about being a mum of 7 children, and how, reading through your blog last night, I loved the way you talked about, unrealistic expectations, I guess. Now, you've had your own journey. Well, it hasn't been all plain sailing with 7 children, obviously, and suffering postnatal depression. But I want you to tell us about your journey, if you don't mind, and maybe chat maybe a little bit about unrealistic expectations that we can have for ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, as she said, I have 7 children. They range in age from 17 down to 3. So we've one doing the leaving cert at the moment, which effectively means the whole house is doing the leaving cert at the moment. So, we have that going on. And I suppose I literally eat, sleep and breathe parenthood, not just because I have the 7 kids, but because I actually work in parenthood. I'm a parenting journalist too. And so I'm writing parenting articles the whole time. I discuss parenting articles. I live parenthood. And I would have parents, I suppose, writing to me a huge amount about their own experiences, and even as a mum of 7, going through parenting each different child and realizing that they're very different personalities and have very different needs. The sort of expectations I have myself now are maybe different to the ones I had when I first started out, when I wanted to get everything absolutely perfect, when I wanted to when I actually believed if my child wasn't sleeping, I was obviously doing something wrong, or if my child was more upset than somebody else's child, I was doing something wrong. And this kind of belief, I suppose, at the beginning, that I could nearly control everything, because that's what you've come from, when you're an adult, you get that bit of control. It's totally different when you have kids. So I think the first time around, my expectations were very unrealistic. I had never even held a baby before, and yet I knew I always wanted to have a large family. I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe too much watching of the Waltons and the Sound of Music. I have my own very unrealistic expectations, therefore. But I always knew that. But when Chloe was born, it was a huge shock to my system, because, I just thought, well, sure, we'll dress her and we'll put her in her cot and she'll go to sleep and we'll wheel her around, and I'll have at that stage, actually, maternity leave was less than it is now. I think it was 18 weeks It was 18 weeks off work and should be all grand. But I was very worried about how I was going to cope in terms of isolation, because we had moved to Newbridge in Kildare. I'm from Dublin. We've moved down there. I didn't know anybody before that was working full time, and I was kind of dreading. I was a bit nervous about that aspect of it more than anything else. I didn't know anybody, the loneliness that I might incur, and actually that became one of the biggest problems for me. I also found that babies don't sleep anywhere near as much. You know that phrase, sleeping like a baby. Obviously, whoever coined that never had baby. And
yes, most definitely.
Also, yeah, definitely. And they also, they have their own plans, or their own. I suppose they don't fit into your plans. You kind of have to fit into their plans a little bit. It's very much kind of letting go and going with the flow. And I think once I realized that it was a case of, accepting that you just take every day as it comes, that things became a little bit more manageable, really, rather than easy. I wouldn't say easy, because there's nothing easy about the early stages of parenthood, but it certainly became more manageable. The more kids I had, certainly the more realistic my expectations were. And I'm not somebody, I love social media, I operate within social media, but I don't look at social media and go, my kid doesn't look like that, my kid doesn't look like that, because I know any of our children could look like anything, and any of us can look like anything and just pose for a photo. It's a completely unrealistic reflection of most people's lives. We tend to share the good bits, we don't tend to share the bad bits, and even if we share the bad bits, maybe we'll the good bits, because it's a mixture of everything. So I suppose the realistic expectations, it really refers to every single aspect of parenthood, trying to juggle it all. I mean, this belief that you'll be able to become a mother or a father and then just settle straight back into work, and you'll be able to keep the two separate. That's nearly impossible. Not just because I have to work in that environment, but it is very difficult. Baby gets sick, baby's up all night, different things happen, and it can be really, really hard to juggle it all. And I think if we don't kind of cut ourselves that little bit of slack and accept that it is that bit hard to juggle it all, that we put ourselves under a kind of undue pressure to achieve the unachievable.
Absolutely. And that's so true. That is so true. And it's like yourself, I hadn't really held babies before I had my kids either. So it's like, an expectation like that. But one thing that did strike me actually was your honesty that always comes through in your parenting journalism. And I mean, that's so wonderful. Obviously, you wouldn't be writing about parenting all the time, and because obviously people resonate with someone that's speaking so honestly. And one thing I loved when I came across what I saw you wrote was that in amongst all this wonderful parenting of 7 children, and mayhem sometimes, I can only imagine what it's like to have 7 children, that you never lost your sense of self. And I think that's a wonderful thing to be able to say, because sometimes if people feel like that, there's almost a feeling that they feel guilty to say that, because they might see someone else that has maybe one child and that's struggling. So there again, it's this, I love that fact that you didn't lose your sense of self. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and share your inspiration on that, so that, that will inspire other moms to say, you know what, I've got this as well, and I haven't lost my sense of self, and that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I very much felt like Jen all the time. I know a lot of parents speak about losing their sense of self. But for me, I was very much there. I mean, I did struggle. I written in the past about struggling with postnatal depression. I had that after the birth of 6 of my 7 children. And I did find parenthood a huge adjustment. But I still very much felt like me. I didn't feel like I was a different person. I still had the same interests. I still had the same desire to get out, to be honest, after the early days were over. I still wanted to socialise with friends. I still wanted to be with people, because I'm a person who likes to be with people. That's, I suppose, something that it's one of the reasons I found the loneliness aspect such a challenge. I'm not really a great one for my own company. But I still very much felt like me. My ideals were the same. Everything about me was the same. Maybe, I suppose, and I think it happens to all of us, you start to personalise things. The sort of things you see on the news and stuff, all of a sudden you care. It's not that you care about a lot more, but you personalise, and everything affects you an awful lot more when you become a parent. But I still very much felt like me, and I still wanted to get back to having elements of my old life back. And when I say that, I mean the same interests, hobbies, the same fun. Not as easy to do when you have kids and you have commitments. And I didn't have a great support network. I didn't have many people around to help out. So it was really just myself and my husband trying to manage it all. So it wasn't easy, but I still knew I was still me. I didn't feel lost. And I know I have read people discussing this, and I can only imagine how that feels, to feel that they have lost that sense of self, that they feel completely smothered by motherhood. I love being a mother. I find it the hardest thing also that I've ever done, but I still very much am me. And I suppose I bring me to how I parent, I suppose. And I think so. I think for a lot of us, there is that sense of self still there. It's just maybe people feel overwhelmed by the responsibility. You actually haven't lost your sense of self. And if you look at your parenting style, if you look at how you relate to your children, if you look at how you continue to relate to the world, or maybe even your struggles, that very much comes from the person that you are and the person that you still are. You're just juggling more things.
Yeah, and that's very true. And I suppose it's that awareness that you're saying there, and for people to realize, you know what, if they are struggling with it, you know, I often say I lost my mojo for a while, and like that I did, but as you say, it was overwhelmed more. I was still there, and we are still there, even if we feel we've lost our sense of self. It's just a matter of going through the little layers and looking at the beliefs we hold, I suppose, around the stories that we're telling ourselves. As you say there, we can say, like, my sense of my parenting skills are my sense of self coming through, and we can always just look at these and find out the true story of, and find ourselves in it all again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I suppose my daughter every now and then says to me, tells me, she tells her friends, no, my mum's not like other mums. Now, I tend to get mildly offended at that and say, excuse me, what do you mean I'm not like other mums? And she goes, I just have to explain to them. They might be expecting a mummy type. I think I am incredibly maternal. I adore being a mother. But I suppose she's looking at aspects of me that still come through. And it is me, Jen, coming through to how I parent her and how I parent the lads. I don't know if there's that gender difference that sees it differently, or maybe it's age difference. That's why she sees it differently.
That's so funny.
It is. I feel a bit like the Incredible Hulk, you know, and sometimes when she describes me, she's not like other mums, I'm not like other guys, or is that Michael Jackson? It's one of them says it anyway and then turns into a monster. I feel like that sometimes when she describes me that way.
Yeah, that's funny, but it's amazing how our children do perceive us. And I mean, I talk about a lot in my work too, how siblings can grow up and each of them will perceive their upbringing in such a different way, where, you know, you might be having a conversation with your friend or your siblings on a night out, let's say, the adults, and you're saying, gosh, I don't remember my childhood being like that at all. And sometimes it can feel as though we grew up in a different family. Yeah. So I think we perceive our surroundings differently.
Definitely. And I think even if you look at how you parent your children, I mean, we parent our eldest very differently to how we parent children further down the line. I mean, our eldest is our guinea pig. They're the ones that I suppose, the ones who make the mistakes are the ones we sometimes get it right on, and the ones that we tend to be maybe that little bit stricter and that little bit slower to let go of the reins, because they're
I've lost you there a little bit, Jen. Yeah.
Can you hear me again?
Oh, that's okay.
So I mean, it is that whole thing, trial and error, I suppose. I was saying with your first, you're hoping you get it right. You know, you're anxious about what the dangers of the world. So everything is a little bit different that first time around, I think. And certainly, kids further down the pecking order might claim that the eldest might claim kids further down the pecking order have an easier role. But I reckon that there's a special role of being the eldest too. I'm an eldest too, so I know that. And you get to be the first who does everything. There is that home novelty factor too. But yeah, you do get to be your parents' guinea pig.
Love that. Now, also, you know, I wanted to talk to you about your recent article that you had in the Irish Times about bullying, and I know that from that you also had an interview on the radio, because that subject and that topic can really trigger a lot of people, because they've either maybe been in a situation themselves where they've been bullied as a child, or maybe even they've been bullied as an adult, because really I think the same set of actions are set in motion, whether it is an adult or a child. But really, you got a great response to that article, and I'd love to speak to you about that article and what your feelings about it are on the whole topic of bullying.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was one of those articles, and I write columns and articles, and I'm used to putting out a call to people and asking for contributors to articles. And usually you're trying to find, you know, often you're trying to find that last contributor to fill in, complete the article and to give that balanced view. And on this occasion, it was within 5 minutes of putting the call out for contributors, I was actually so overwhelmed with people wanting to share their story that I had to start turning parents away. But the stories kept coming after them, and I was only able to feature three families in the article. Three very different families. There was a primary school child, a teenage girl and a teenage boy, and they had very different experiences of bullying. But the really sad thing I think that came from this was the amount of parents who felt helpless, who felt that, you know, they weren't able to protect their children. They were really struggling with trying to get on top of the bullying issue. Bullying impacts the whole family, you know, siblings, parents, the child who's going through it, parents talking about leaving their child at school every day and worrying what sort of day was their son or daughter going to have? Would things be okay? How would they be when they came home? Siblings fretting the same. It was really sad to think that in 2019 we still have this issue and we don't seem to be getting on top of it. And I spoke to the ISPCC about it too, and they said from the calls that they're getting, bullying is proving to still be a huge issue in society. So in all the ways that we've moved on, we're still not getting on top of something that naturally leads to generally terrible mental health within our young people. Because of all, again, speaking to the parents of the children I featured and speaking to the parents of the children I wasn't able to feature, many of these children ended up in counselling long-term. They either ended up with anxiety or depression, low self-esteem, low confidence. And as I said, as parents, the parents themselves were constantly fretting and feeling they'd failed their children in some way, even though they had done their absolute best. It's trying to work within the confines of the system and trying to work alongside their own child and the child or children involved. Places that, you know, the worst nightmare of every parent, where those cases were realised too. It was definitely one of the hardest pieces I had to write, and one of the hardest pieces to follow up afterwards, because the additional problem is that parents feel they don't have a voice. So in the newspaper article, the children's names and the parents' names were protected because some of the children were still going through bullying, and so we had to protect the families involved. And the parents who spoke up or who contacted me afterwards and who would have contributed or who couldn't contribute feel that they can't put their situation out there on that public platform because they have to protect their child, they have to protect their family. They're afraid of the fallout, because bullying doesn't just stop when the incident is dealt with. There's the after effects, there's the isolation that continues, there's the self-esteem that still needs to be built back up. I mean, there was one case where one mother was talking to me about this, her daughter who had moved on from the group that were targeting and bullying her, and then the group decided the next approach they'd take would be to target her new friends and to start hassling them about bullying or about befriending the girl that they had previously bullied. So it became hellish for her. She dropped out of her hobbies and interests, things that she'd done from being a very young girl, and she dropped out of all these things to try to escape them. So every avenue of escape for her was closed. I mean, that was really, really hard to hear. There was and this particular mum I was speaking to lost her own mum during this time. So that's the thing with bullying. As bullying's going on, life continues. You know, there's all these other things going on, and this families are trying to deal with so much at the one time. And this particular woman really, really struggled with the guilt. She felt that maybe she failed her daughter. She was trying to look after her sick mother as well at the same time, and then I suppose the situation escalated. Her daughter is now thankfully in counselling, and her mother is supporting her and did support her at the time too. But as mothers, of course, and as parents, we tend to always feel we haven't done enough if we can't make a situation perfect. We also had the situation, and this was a common theme I tended to hear with boys, which was a little bit worrying, that when things started with psychological bullying for boys, again, a lot of the parents felt it was never taken seriously. But inevitably it escalated to physical bullying. In the cases, obviously, that spoke to me, and I was only hearing the cases where bullying was a huge problem and where it still going on, because these are the parents that wanted to speak up. But it was huge, and it was very distressing to read some of the stories and very distressing to talk to parents. And there are some parents, the parents who have endured the worst and experienced all our worst nightmares, and there are no words of comfort that you can offer to that parent. You know, it was an eye-opening experience. I knew it was an issue. I knew bullying was an issue. I don't think I appreciated how big an issue it was, because I'm just one person putting out that call, and the stories continued, and the set on the radio afterwards with parents going, we don't know how to get on top of this situation. I don't know how to protect my son or daughter. I don't know how to move things forward for them. I mean, the schools obviously have their bullying policies, and schools are doing their best within that situation, but the parents certainly the parents that spoke to me felt that so much more needs to be done, because they're left coping with the aftermath, and there is an aftermath. It's not just a simple situation of saying to somebody, stop that, and then all is fine, we shake hands and we're pals again. It's not as simplistic as that. There is a huge situation for the children to continue to deal with afterwards, and that was certainly a place where a lot of the parents felt there was no further support, no efforts maybe to reintegrate children back into the school system, to help them make friends again, to help them overcome what they had been through. And I suppose protecting kids from psychological bullying is very difficult. That's what was the answer anyway that a lot of the parents were hearing, that this was a harder one when it's physical. It was very traumatic for the parents whose children who had endured physical bullying, because they had flagged in the lead up that it was escalating and it was becoming a problem, and then there was concern about other siblings becoming involved. It was just the impact on the family was so huge, and it was the family that maybe wasn't thought about. It was being treated like maybe as a single pronged issue, when it obviously is so much more than that. It was, yeah, definitely one of those articles that I think will continue to, I suppose I'm still hearing the stories, I'm still hearing feedback, I'm still hearing families that have been destroyed and that are still trying to cope with it. And there is still that huge feeling of frustration, and where do we go now? What can we do now? And how can we do it while trying to protect our son or daughter who's still enduring it? And that is the big thing. It's somewhat easier to speak about if the situation is over and the child has grown. It's not so easy to talk about when the child is still in that situation, and the potential fallout that could occur if the person was to go public.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and really, like, it's terrible when someone is saying something and they're not heard.
Yeah.
And especially when it's now, I suppose appreciate too that other articles have said that bullying, it's very hard to define it almost, because there's so many, something simple could be said to someone and it could be construed as, well, that child is very sensitive, and I think that's very difficult then, because if you're a sensitive person, you're entitled to be who you are, and you are who you are. I mean, it doesn't mean that people should or that you should change, really. So do you think that maybe, is it up to us as parents as well and schools to help children build resilience skills in order? Do you think this would even work for children? Or
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, it's interesting. The week before the bullying piece went out, I had another article that was talking about kindness lessons in schools. Now, I know kindness is covered generally, and it's covered as part of SPHE, and I know that in secondary school, but I was talking about making it central and core to the curriculum, as central and core and as valued as, say, English, Irish and maths, that it was. And until we do that, I don't think it's ever going to maintain its value in school, particularly as kids get older. I'm looking at my daughter doing the Leaving Cert now. I see where her point of focus is. I see where with having attended so many parent-teacher meetings over the course, we all love to hear our children are kind and have done wonderful things. It's a wonderful feedback to get. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't carry the same weight, because it all at the moment is ultimately going towards the Leaving Cert and what you'll achieve there. And at parent-teacher meetings, I remember standing discussing with parents. We were looking at our watches and looking at the different cues, and some parents go, "Sure, I'm not going to SPHE, it's not even an exam subject." And when you have that mentality, that's where the kindness part is coming into it. When you have that mentality, and you can understand why these are time-pressed parents, you can understand, but it just shows that overall, even subconsciously, kindness is not being given the same value. So I had addressed that. I don't always know what order my articles are going to go out in. It turned out that they did actually kind of follow each other nicely. I think for kids we need to do is we do need to build resilience in children. We do need to build a degree of resilience. Of course we do, because the world is not the world that we'd like for them, sadly. The world is also made up of very different children, and I even know from my own family, I have some very sensitive souls, and I have some who can brush things off that little bit more easily. personally, the sort of message I'd be giving to my kids, yes, you may see something as banter. If somebody doesn't like it, then you stop it. It is simple as that. If it's banter, if it's crack, then the other person's enjoying it. And if the other person's not enjoying it, then it's time to stop. And I do think we need to talk to our kids about that sort of thing, and about helping our children to realise when a child is happily engaging with the crack and the friendly slagging, and when they're not. Because you know what, kids are kids and they make mistakes, and we all make mistakes. Adults make mistakes, kids make mistakes. That's our role as parents, to step in and help them. I think parents need to be held accountable. I think if we're ever going to get on top of the bullying situation, we're going to have to move to a stage where the parents are held accountable, because as I said, young people have been making bad decisions since the dawn of time. You know, we've all been there, we've all made bad decisions, but until kindness becomes inherent in our schools and absolutely core and central to our schools. And my article there got very mixed reactions, because I had some teachers who felt that I was undermining what they were doing, and that this was very much a parent's role. And of course it's a parent's role. We're their primary teachers, we're their first teachers. It is up to us as parents to teach our children about kindness and about others and about empathy and about inclusion and about all these really important things, and accepting that the world is different and that people are different, and sure, wouldn't it be very boring anyhow if we were all the same. It is up to us to do that, but the reality is not every single child will be shown kindness at home, and that's a very sad fact of life. And that's why I believe it needs to be central and core to the education system, both to afford those children who don't see kindness at home, sadly, because the world, as I said, is not the place we'd like it to be, and also to reinforce what they're learning at home, and to show that there is a value on it, to teach our kids, that the adults of the future, that we value kindness, that the world and society will value kindness and will value your kindness and your empathy and your inclusion of all. And I suppose just the whole idea is that it becomes as valued and it becomes as important, and hopefully, you know, if you've got kinder kids and kinder adults, then it just stands to reason that we would have a reduction in the rates of bullying that we have, because sadly it doesn't stop at school. You know, it doesn't stop. We all know it goes on to the workplace, it goes on into adulthood. During your formative years, if you have been constantly put down, constantly a target for bullying, constantly bullied, constantly told you're not good at something, you're too sensitive, it's very much victim blaming. You're entitled to be sensitive. Yeah. You are entitled to be sensitive. People have to respect your sensitivity. Yes, to help make life easier, it helps if you can build a degree of resilience in your kids. And I think we all have to try to do that. And we all know we have certain kids who need resilience, a few resilience skills more than others. That is a fact of life. But people are not entitled to be unkind. That's my, you know, I think that's what I believe. That's what I think is really what will help change bullying. I think it's the two-pronged approach. I also think that we need to, and this is the really hard part, I think we need to talk to our kids about supporting a child who's being bullied, because the people on the sidelines, they're afraid. I mean, how often, you know, what's our biggest fear as our kids are growing up? That they'll adopt the sheep mentality, you know, and just follow and follow blindly. We want our kids, and we need to teach our kids it's okay to stand up for what's right. And if you see somebody being victimized or bullied, or you see an action that's not fair, that's not treating somebody respectfully, that's treating somebody unkindly, that it is as important to stand up as it is not to do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think we all focuses on the child or the person who's doing the bullying and the bully, but the bystanders have such a huge role to play. And if we could get them involved, what's the bully going to do? What's the person who's bullying going to do if all of a sudden the power, if things are reversed and the power is given to the child who's being victimized? We need to teach our kids that. We need to teach our kids that from a very young age. We are becoming a society, and we can see it in adulthood. We are becoming a society that believes, pull the ladder up, Jack, I'm okay. We need to move on from that. That's what I see so much. It's certainly something I'd always say to my own kids. You know, if you see something unfair happening, don't be afraid to call it out. That's not so easy as they get older, and you're aware of the much bigger dangers that our kids can be in, the much more dangerous situations their children can be in. But when they're young, this is something that we can teach our kids, and that we can do. That we can all make that little bit of a difference, and we can all potentially help to stop that bullying.
Oh, fantastic, Jen. There's such an amount of information there you've given us, and I love that, and I think it's very true, actually. So one thing I'd love to go back to is, I know one of the other speakers is talking about conscious parenting. So yes, it is twofold. Of course, it's up to parents, but not every parent then uses the same skills with their children, I guess. So it is a matter of a two-pronged approach, as you mentioned, both parenting and a system being in place at school. And like the bullies, or someone that will bully someone else, obviously has an issue too. It could be a power thing. It could be something that a story they're coming from at home. And if they're not getting the support, they might come in, and the first person they meet, they'll need to possibly get whatever is in them out. But we can't take all the focus away from the person, as you say, the bystanders that are looking at this, and also the person that's actually suffering. It's everyone. It's everyone, and looking at the issue for all of us. And yes, as parents, certainly, I think, I don't know, a lot of people say it's their worst nightmare if they had a child that was doing the bullying. But I mean, yeah, equally, it's very hard to be a parent of a child who is being bullied.
It is. I mean, it is. I can only imagine if you are the parent who's being told that your child is bullying. It is, as you said, it's your worst nightmare. And the first thing you're going to think is, oh my God, how could he? Well, I suppose, I imagine the first thing most parents will do is go into denial, because
Absolutely,
nobody would want to believe for a second that their child would do that. And I do think we do have to be very mindful of this. You know, as I said, young people have made bad decisions since the dawn of time, and we do it as adults, never mind young people. They're just learning, and you know, like, that is life. And if I think that's what's really important, that really all an adult or all a parent can do, if this is brought to them that their child is bullied, is deal with it. You know, we can't turn back the time that they've done that, but certainly there should be consequences, there should be fallout, there should be an absolute reassurance that this will not happen again. I don't think, you know, how parent blaming is the way to go either. I think parents need to be held accountable, but I do think I've been told, even in the discussions that follow the bullying piece, that obviously the biggest advocate for the bully is their parents. So it isn't easy for a parent to actually accept that their child is bullying, and that we'll all, you know, they'll look for excuses, they'll look for reasons, and maybe there are excuses and reasons, but the fact remains the same. If your child is bullying, you need to do something about it, you know. And I think if you think of any incident that's happened, not a bullying incident, but maybe an occasion where a child has behaved badly towards another, if a parent steps up to the plate, deals with it, reassures the parent and child it's not going to happen again, and there are some kind of consequences or fallout for the child who is involved in it, most of us can accept it's dealt with. You know, they've apologized, we're going to move forward, and that's the only way I suppose we can move forward, in an obviously much more complicated way. But if somebody is bullying, that situation needs to be dealt with, and that's why the parents need to be held accountable, because the child they either don't necessarily care, they don't necessarily realize the enormity of their actions, they may be hitting out for all manner of reasons, but that's why it has to come back to the parent. That is our role. We are responsible for our young people that we are bringing up. It is up to us to instill good values, to deal with the situation. With the support of the school, and that has to be done, but it does need to come back to the parent. But I can absolutely only imagine the nightmare of being the parent who's told that it is your child. That doesn't remove the need to deal with it, though. That
Absolutely
is something
not.
to move forward with.
It's like any story we have in our life. I mean, I always tell people too, the first thing to do is to own it where we are now. You know, I mean, we mightn't like it, but unless we own it, we can't make a choice to move forward. Because if we're living in denial, we're living in the past. We're not being in the present moment, dealing with it and saying, I don't like this. You know, I'm devastated or whatever feeling. I'm angry at someone for blaming my child, or whatever emotion comes up. But it's actually to be with those emotions, with whatever they are, because only when we lean into them can we actually get through the other side and have a consequence for both ourselves, and look at maybe our story around it. And it could sometimes be something simple that we might need to put in place as a parent. You know, it could be that simple, or maybe it might be a little bit more complicated. But it's something, as you say yourself, that it's our job as parents to own it and then go through it and have a consequence and have it dealt with accordingly.
That's it. I mean, it's the only way I suppose we can move forward when we have to deal with things like that. I mean, there's always times in our lives where we're mortified because our child has done something, or you know, that it's the less nice side of parenthood. But unfortunately, parenthood it's not all roses. It's not a bed of roses, and there are things that have to be dealt with. And I suppose that's the other thing. If you have a parent, and I think any decent person no matter how hurt or angry you are, if your child is being bullied, any decent parent will accept that if another parent is trying to deal with it, that's what all that the parent can do. If they're trying to deal with, they're trying to meet you halfway, they're trying to resolve the situation. Any decent person will accept that. I suppose it would be very difficult news for anybody to hear. But I mean, there can be all manner of reasons behind it. In fairness, for many parents, they may have no inkling at all, no inkling at all. And that's the thing that you have to, I suppose, there is a sensitivity. You want to protect your child with all your might. If it's your child who's being bullied, you want to. But there's another parent and there's another child involved. And for that parent, they've got to process it and deal with it. But it still needs to be processed and dealt with. And when the schools start holding parents accountable, and I heard a couple of stories, when I was doing the article as well, of schools working around parents. So, I mean, there was one child who'd been suspended for bullying another child, numerous suspensions turned out, but the suspensions were working around whenever mum and dad could arrange to take time off work.
Yeah.
The parents weren't even being inconvenienced. I mean, this isn't really holding the parents accountable. The child, in the meantime, who has been bullied and whose story has been proven to be true, hence the actions against the bully, still has to go to school with the bully and isn't, and still has to try to get on with their life, and the fallout. And it never tends to just be just that one child, that one versus one. It rarely works out like that anyway. So the child is still going into school, and the bullied parents are getting time to work around. When can they take a day off work to accommodate a suspension? That is not holding the parents accountable. And that really, I mean, how likely is that to have the desired effect? Very unlikely, I would think. And according to this parent, it turned out to be the case. The child did it again. The parents, as I said, when you're very, very, very mildly inconvenienced, it was a day off work at a time that suited them. That's how it all panned out. It just wasn't really, the crime and the punishment didn't fit the crime, I suppose.
Yeah. Jen, I could talk to you forever about this, and I know that I'm sure and people will be delighted with this conversation, with this open, honest conversation. I know there'll be two sides to everything, and as you say, and even you said you got both sides of it from. But it's a topic it's no harm to discuss it and to let people hear both sides of it as well, because it opens, and it's good to be open-minded about these things. I think you need to be, and not be tunnel visioned about having a set opinion about something like bullying, because every situation will be different, and every child is different, and every child deserves the right to be here and to be respected. And that's something that we have to work on in the future, as you say. Yeah. Jen, if people want to follow you, read your wonderful articles, what is the best place and also your book, actually, I want you to mention that. Where can people go to find you?
Okay, well, book-wise, I get my book most places. It's nearly in all Easons. It's often goes out of sale online, so sometimes you get it on Amazon or through Urban Press, but you may get it through Easons or Dubray online, but you'll certainly get it in the shops. That's called The Real Mum's Guide to Surviving Parenthood. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at mama-tude, which is MAMA_TUDE, Instagram at mama_tude, MAMA_tude, or on Facebook, Jen Hogan Mamatude, and then I have my own site, mamatude.com.
I love the Mamatude.
Mamatude, yeah, that's it. Parenting a little Mamatude.
Yeah, it's a great name, and I think it's great, and I hope that people do, jump on board and read your articles more, because I've started to really look for them now as well. And you were on Ireland AM last week as well, which was wonderful, and talking there again about wonderful topics that we need conversations to be had about. In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just about normalizing a lot of the things that we all go through as parents. It's normalizing it so that people are afraid to speak about it in general company, actually, rather than in a hush way, because it is part of life and part of parenting.
It is, and it's great. I've loved the conversation, Jen. As I say, I could stay here all day talking to you. Thank you so much for being part of the summit, because one of the things I wanted to get out through this summit is to open these conversations and to give people tools. And I think you have given us tools, and one of them being very much awareness. And also with we can go on and look up at your website, Mamatude, to get more tools to help people. So thanks again, Jen. And I will put up your the ways that people can contact you, so that people can, if they wish to follow you. So talk to you again soon, and thanks again.
Thanks, Laura.